So changing the sort of the feel of the PPA at the minute now, because there's been a lot of talk about corporate PPAs. So a little bit of detail on the utility PPA market and OVO and everything, good things like that. So quick few notes before starting. So who am I? Max is Max. So I'm the Senior PPA Origination Manager at OVO. If you need my email, it's there. I've been working in PPAs for utility PPAs, that is, for around 8 years and been at OVO for around 4 years. A little bit on OVO. We are the 4th largest domestic UK supplier, utility supplier, that is. Launched in 2009. Many of you know we bought SSE's domestic portfolio as well a few years ago. I just wanted to highlight we are domestic supplier only, so we don't do any B2B supply, so corporate PPAs don't quite work for us. There's our tagline about working to make energy better for the people and the planet, so keep that in mind. And I just wanted to touch on a utility PPA and how we define that. So utility PPA is two parties, an offtaker, a generator. Offtaker being us and a generator, and I'm typically going to be talking about fixed term indexed price PPAs, shorter term, so we're talking 1 to 4 years maybe, risk managed typically by us, and I am typically going to be talking about distribution connected generators rather than any transmission stuff. Hopefully that all makes sense there. A little bit what I'm going to talk through, but I'll go into this now. So a little bit on OVO and the PPA market. So we haven't been in the PPA space, the utility PPA space, for that long. We signed our first PPA in November 2021, but we wanted to really push the boundaries there. So a big scale up. That means we are, I think this is from Feb 25, a Cornwall Insight report, so it might be slightly outdated, but we are the 8th largest PPA offtaker in the UK. So it's amazing. And I wanted to highlight our sort of bread and butter, where we what sort of PPAs we're going after. So typically like a 500 kilowatt to a 10 meg PPA, all technologies, all renewable technologies. That isn't to say that we don't do either smaller or larger stuff. So our biggest we have on our books is a 55 megawatt solar with a party in the room today, I think. But this is kind of our bread and butter. And the reason we kind of do this is so we can spread our risks. We can do more of a portfolio effect. So we are contracting with smaller generators, but large volume of them. I wanted to really quickly highlight on just utility supply in the domestic space and renewables and sort of what are the hot topics kind of going on in a minute. So we have been in a consistent high price environment for domestic supply for 2-3 years now after the energy crisis. And that is something, the reason I wanted to highlight that is it's really key to note in terms of how and what OVO or a utility supplier might then want to offer and might want to deal with and actually offer in terms of PPAs or how they want to contract with the renewables. So keep that in mind. And it is, I suppose, our responsibility to make sure that we are being as sensible and prudent as possible with our customers' money and about how we link with the renewables. The second thing then that leads on to is green tariffs and REGO. So OVO isn't wholesale green anymore. In 2023, we sort of pushed back against the REGO market, no longer thinking that the sort of fuel mix at the end of the year annually reported is the right way to do it. We don't typically support the 24-hour matching as it stands now. Our view is that we can try and incentivize new build generation and sort of maybe change the REGO scheme so that it really pushes and gives an extra premium to a brand new generator maybe for the first 3 years, and legacy ones that are already on a subsidy may get less sort of REGOs for that export, but there's different things there. I won't touch on GB Energy because I've got a note on them at the end, but just really with them coming into the play now, we just really want them to get going and incentivize the right things in the right places. And the final thing is about innovative tariffs. So obviously as a domestic supplier, we have to make sure we're ahead of the game and keeping up with all our competitors. So I think that links massively to renewables about like, how do we offer our green tariffs? Do we want to do demand shifting, EVs and all this stuff and things along the lines also, as well as social tariffs and the sort of evolution of the price cap. So that's a little bit on utility supply. And then a little bit on the current trends that we think are shaping the utility PPA market. First and foremost, I'm going to call out is that local supply and supply exemptions. So many of you may know, maybe you may not. since the sort of P442 Exxon modification, this is becoming a bit more of a hot topic in the UK market. There is discussions around it being around a £50 a megawatt hour benefit to share between, well, all the parties, including a supplier, but generator, customers. Our stance on that is that needs to be reformed. We think if there's a lot of money available in the market, it should be more targeted at maybe we're looking at sort of more community generation. It's definitely smaller generators, things like that. So we don't offer a license exempt supply PPA. We don't offer uplifts for that, and we're working with Ofgem DESNZ to get that formed and tightened. And if there is money available, it should be put to the right place. Something else that's happening in the market is especially in the utility one, is shorter term prices, shorter term contracts. So typically we're now seeing people want contracts for less than a year. There may be a bit of sort of recency bias in their minds around how high prices can go. So they don't want to lock in for 1, 2, 3, 4 years. But that is something we need to, as a supplier, need to manage. As you'd imagine, on both sides, a 6-month PPA, depending on the technology, is the risks are a lot more concentrated. So if you're taking a 6-month solar over summer or a 6-month solar over winter, you need to sort of price those risks in accordingly. So you may receive a worse price for that contract. But then there is a resurgence in utility PPA competition. So we are seeing, it's that big circle on the right there. So there's, by my count, I think 34 UK PPA offtakers. There may be a couple more as well. Competing for around 10,000 renewable generators. And just put sort of for a flavour, there's 56 terawatt hours of just non-CFD generation available in the UK. So there's a lot of competition, and this is really beneficial for generators to be able to receive the best price possible. Suppliers in the PPA market. So this does go slightly counter to what Shoesmith was saying slightly earlier around standardisation. But again, I'm talking about it from the smaller generator side. So there is contract standardisation in the UK PPA market has, I think, picked up definitely, and there's some people in the room, Renewable Exchange, have really pushed this along. Again, on the smaller stage, but it does really support faster transactions, reduce costs, increase transparency and trust with our generators, and it does allow for greater accessibility. So community groups, a farmer, all these people that potentially aren't renewable generation isn't their main job. They're able to access the PPA market in many ways now. And I think to sort of prove this is really working, like I think for us on one day we signed 25 PPAs. Again, so the smaller, probably between sort of 500 kilowatt and 10 meg sites, but we got the information from the brokerage or the PPAs themselves, the generators themselves, and we're able to execute those really quickly. So that really helped us, and that does reduce our costs, and we can pass that through. Just a bit on PPA products, it's just making sure, I think I can just really say that bottom line there, comparing apples for apples. Lots of generators receive lots of quotes. It's just making sure that what you are receiving you can compare that against the other ones. So what embedded benefits are being either passed through, retained, what's included within the power price, what risks are there. So just make sure when you are negotiating PPA that you can compare those apples for apples. And the final thing is risks. I suppose really key for us as a supplier is to make sure, and as a domestic supplier as well, is to make sure that we're not exposing ourselves to too much risk. And then eventually that burden would lie on domestic customers. So you just need to make sure where those risks are laying, and that's where that contract standardization with smaller generators really works, because then everyone is aware of where their risks are, and they can contract accordingly. Things like balancing, of course. There obviously is cannibalization. That risk is big. Capture price, and it is getting worse. So generators have been questioning us on the risk discount we're taking on fixed time contracts, but it's sort of explained through cannibalization. And there was obviously, of course, counterparty risk. So something that we experience is from us to a generator is more around a new build generation in an SPV. How do we, if we're contracting that for 2 or 3 years and it's quite large, how are we confident that that site is actually going to get built? But then similarly, there is obviously counterparty risk for a generator and a supplier. And just going on to utility PPA and the opportunities. So just kind of closing out here. What are the opportunities in the market? So I did mention earlier sort of GB Energy and the local power plan. So with the local power plan now going through Parliament and GB Energy almost set up, well, our ask is that is set up in a quick fashion, and it can really target the UK smaller generator sector really in a really targeted way, and a fair and equitable transition can lead out from that. That links into community energy. So something we're working on a lot in OVO is working with community energy, both Community Energy England and directly with community energy groups. And we're seeing this as a fantastic opportunity to really incentivize people to come along with us in the transition, and but also to be able to offer them a really great price, and they can then invest back into the community, and it's a good flywheel in that aspect. The final, point 3 there on domestic supply and additionality. So we have seen, and there was a lot of discussions earlier around how the REGO market can reform and change and support the green transition. And that's just something that we're seeing as a big opportunity for OVO, because we want to be able to say that every pound that a domestic customer is paying into us are we putting that in the right place? Are we putting that in a place that can actually green the grid and actually cause additionality? And that's something that we've got. I put there point 4, a little selfless plug, I suppose, but like we have what we call an extra investment PPA, and that is a PPA that's directly targeted at brand new, unsubsidized renewable generators. And what we do is we pay them quite a significant REGO premium on top of their PPA price. And that, as I mentioned earlier and alluded to earlier, that's our opportunity to try and reform the REGO market, to really say, you are brand new, you're not receiving a subsidy. Our customers are paying paying for green energy, but that pot we're saving from not paying for wholesale green, we're using that to pay the premiums. And that can be, we're looking at, that's a 1, 2, 3 year sort of PPA, but we're looking at how we can extend that further and allow everyone to access that. So, and that's something we're really working with community energy on as well. I think that's me. Thank you very much indeed.